Aloha and welcome to a new episode of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast. The podcast where, we're out of ideas for the off season, so we're going on with our top fives, and we're joined today by Dan Kotnik. Dan, thanks for joining us today for another rip roaring fun of top fives as we go into our top five movie franchises. And we're gonna start it off the bat. Joe, you had some quick marching orders for this one, so why don't you lay those out for everyone?
Well, I'm going to take a step back and say thanks for being here, Dan. Like I said in the pre-show, that if we're all kind of busy at the moment, but I knew there'd be one person that would say yes, and I was like, all right, well, I'm going to shoot him the DM first and go from there.
More like he couldn't say no to this offer.
Right.
Not in the Godfather way either. Just there's no way in his body would let him say no to this kind of episode.
Right, exactly. This is the like lowest common denominator, like cheese that I will never pass up. Like you're exactly right. If there's one person on Packers Twitter that will always respond yes to something like this, it's me. I held no shame to that.
But being that last week was Father's Day, and I know you two are the father type, I haven't met the right one to give me that option yet. So, I'm still holding out hope into my getting close to my 40s here pretty quick. But anyway, Mike, I know you were down with the sickness because of the presents that your kids decided to give you. But did you guys enjoy your Father's Day time, and did you have fun with your kids?
Dan, go for it.
Oh yeah, no, I had a blast. I got to so I was unfortunately the Celtics couldn't give me the best Father's Day present and win and sweep on Friday when I was with my entire family. I had to wait till Monday when I was all by myself and got to watch it with my dog sitting outside. That was fun. But no, got to do some golfing on Saturday with my dad and rest of my family, and baseball game on actual Father's Day with my son. He didn't like fully hate it, so like I will any activity I can take my son to that I love, and he's just kind of like, and he doesn't like melt down. I'm like, great, win, awesome.
That's an absolute win. No, yeah. Despite the illness that was bestowed upon me as my Father's Day gift from my children, it was still a great day. Like Dan said, no complaints. Anytime you can spend time with your kids, and as long as they're having a good time, we'll shovel through and find a way to have a good time anyway.
And that's not to say I didn't do anything. I was with my dad. We went for a road trip to check out some things. As people may know on the podcast, I am a bit of a genealogy nerd, so we went and scoped out some areas for some stuff that I did some research on, which luckily is within a decent area. So he just went along for the ride with me, and we just kind of took a, half a day road trip, just driving around into the country. So we did some fun stuff too. But I know you guys have kids that are young enough that it's kind of the fun time to have Father's Day until they hit like the teenage age where they just don't want to be around, and
yeah, they're still in the macaroni tie as a Father's Day gift era, which I
ignorant
appreciate.
stage. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but as Mike said, we're continuing on with our top fives for the off season. This one is top 5 movie franchises. So I put a couple rules in place for our little thing here. One is obviously there has to be at least 3 movies to be considered a franchise for this. So like we were mentioned earlier, Dan said, while Top Gun may be a good set of movies, they're outside of being a full franchise right now. Or I said, like the Mighty Ducks has 3 movies, you can consider that a movie franchise. And rule number 2 was just that if it made it easier for you to make the list, you could break, like, if you wanted, you could choose Marvel as your franchise, but if you wanted to, you could break it down to, okay, Thor has enough movies, that's a separate movie franchise. I even mentioned when I sent these guys the rules, there's been like 5 different Batman iterations, so you could break it down to like the Dark Knight franchise or the 90s Batman franchise. Obviously, the newest one with Pattinson can't be considered franchise because we're only at 1 with him, but those were the two guidelines I gave these guys for creating their lists. So with that said, let's start with honorable mentions. So Dan, since you're the guest, why don't you give us an honorable mention?
Do you want just one or all of them? Because I have five. I have five. I have five outside looking in that I had like right on the edge. This might have been the hardest thing I've ever done for a podcast. I will.
Why don't you give us one right now? Because I'm having a hard time thinking of my honorable mentions and I forgot to write them down.
Okay.
So
I will say this one was literally this was the bubble team, like last team out of the pick. And it's one that you mentioned, Joe. It was the Dark Knight trilogy. It was really hard to leave that one off, but it was like right on the edge there.
Yeah, and those out of all the Batman, I mean, I love some of the 90 ones because I grew up with them. The first one was great, Returns was great. Forever, I loved Forever. I know a lot of people really were bad on Forever, but I loved it. And obviously I couldn't stand the Clooney one, but if I had to choose my Batman franchise for movies, The Dark Knight is what it is. And I wish we would have had that. I wish instead of recasting to like an Affleck or something like that, we could have saw the Batman versus Superman with Christian Bale as the Batman and that. But I agree. That would be an honorable mention. So with me, that would be mine too.
It's arguably like
one
the
of
best
mine.
superhero movies. Arguably the
Yes.
best like version of a superhero movie. Yeah.
And another thing is I wish we would have got, had, God bless him, rest his soul, stuff like that. But Heath Ledger's Joker was amazing.
Yeah. Absolutely perfect.
Yeah, and it just went downhill from there with Jared Leto, and yeah. So. Mike, what do you got for an honorable mention?
Honorable mention, I'm going in a totally different direction. Land Before Time.
Okay.
First, like movie franchise I followed, and I don't even know what number they're on with our kids right now.
Oh,
but
God,
yeah,
who knows?
Everyone knows where they were when Littlefoot's mother died to save Littlefoot. So, yeah,
that was our generation's Bambi.
Yes.
Oh, for sure. Hardcore.
Yeah. So that's mine.
Now this one, and now that I'm seeing the lists, these are definitely ones that could have snuck into my top 5, but like Dan said, is really hard to. Beverly Hills Cop. I love the Beverly Hills Cop movies. That was during peak Eddie Murphy, just getting into the movies, just getting, his major stuff. And I'm glad for the Beverly Hills movies for a couple of reasons. One, obviously, they're great. I mean, the third one was a little bit, but the first two, amazing. But it also kept Eddie Murphy out of the Ghostbusters franchises because he was the one who originally was supposed to play Winston Zedmore. And I just don't think it would have worked. So, and he passed on Ghostbusters to do Beverly Hills Cop. So I'm thankful for that one.
Are you excited about the new one?
The new Ghostbusters?
No, the new Beverly
Hills. I am in a way. I'm kind of shy for it because of what they tried to do with the TV show that ended up being like a no-go. But I also heard it's supposed to be more hardcore than all three of the other originals combined.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too. Real quick too. When do you think the last Land Before Time movie was premiered? When did the last Land Before Time movie come out?
Oh,
I want to say it was the 2010s, and just because that's they are siphoning every little bit out of it that they can.
18. I'll go 2018.
2016. February of 2016.
Yeah.
That's 14 movies in total.
That is one of those movies that they can hook a new generation every time, so they just continue to siphon it. So, all right, we'll do a couple more honorable mentions, and then we'll get into the heart of our list. So, Dan, what was your next honorable?
Right below Dark Knight is Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow, it only made your honorable mention. That's crazy.
I know. There's just it. Maybe it's because I haven't watched it in a long time, and I need to get back. Because I've been meaning to like. That should have been what I did for Father's Day, was just sit down and watch like all 3 director's cuts like back to back, like you used to do in high school. But yeah, I think it was just like there's only 5 spots, and the 5 that I had, I was like, it's really hard for me to take. It's just hard for me to find a place to put that in there. It deserves to be in a list, but it's like in terms of what it means to me and how I view it, like in the pantheon of like full franchises, it's like the 3 Lord of the Rings movies are great. Hobbit, if you want to include that, kind of it weighs it down just a little bit, but like it's still just really hard for me to. I will say a lot of these OLIs, like with my honorable mentions, like they're all like 1A, 1B. I mean, it's like
Right.
they're basically all like on one plane. But yeah, Lord of the Rings just barely making it out for me.
Do you want to hear something that could cause a big fight?
Please.
I don't like the Lord of the Rings, and I don't like Harry Potter.
That's fair. Dude, Lord of the Rings.
Our
Lord of the
Joe is
Rings
just not a fantastical person.
I don't know what it is. I see my dad loved him, my sister loved him. I just, for whatever it is, I couldn't sit there and get into them. Have you ever seen Clerks 2?
No.
No? Okay. One of these days, go watch Clerks 2, because Randall in there puts it perfectly when he gets into a huge ass argument with with a couple of Lord of the Rings nerds. He's defending the Star Wars trilogy versus the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and he just basically put it perfectly where it's just 3 movies of walking. Even the fucking trees walked. So yeah, those are 3 that I couldn't really get into. Now with that said, I can see why people would put that in their top 5. That's why I was kind of surprised that it was just only an honorable mention for you, because I know some people are like, the way I am with Star Wars, or people are like that with Lord of the Rings.
I went through a phase. I went through a phase in high school where I was all about Lord of the Rings, man.
All right, Kawano-san, what is your next honorable mention?
Next honorable mention is gonna be the Kingsman, actually.
Okay.
Oh, I thought about putting this one on my list. Yeah.
Yeah, it just missed it. Really liked the first movie. Liked the origin story in the third one. I just didn't care for it. I understood the story they were telling in the second one, but I didn't like how so many of the core characters from the first movie were just like, they're gone kind of thing and stuff. And it was like, I understood that you had to clear the deck, but I was like, I feel like that's either one of those off screen or it needed a little more build up to it kind of things, but it was so close.
Yeah, I'm with you. The second one is what kept me from like considering putting it on the list. It was just like, man, that just felt like a clunker, especially coming off of the first one, which is such a good movie. The first Kingsman is so good.
Yep, exactly.
I haven't seen them yet. It's on my list of must watches, but I just
the first one is.
If you want to see Samuel L. Jackson do a Mike Tyson impersonation, you must watch the first movie.
and like I said, it's nothing against them, and it's not because I haven't wanted to. It's just there's such a list of shit that I have not been able to.
Absolutely.
It's just a paralysis, of options.
Well, everything. I am a super nerd for when it comes to Star Wars, so I prioritize that above everything else. So I will make a list of, okay, well, I need to sit down and watch this movie. Oh, they just dropped 3 episodes of, Bad Batch.
Acolyte just got out. God damn. Now I can't do anything for 2 months.
So I do it like Logan. I have yet to see Logan because it just seems like that stays on the list and I just haven't been able to get to it or anything like that. But I'm hoping to eventually catch the Kingsman at some point to say,
the first Kingsman is like pretty close to a 10 out of 10 like perfect movie in terms of like execution, set, character, like all of it. Like I'm not saying it's one of the best movies, but like when anything it tries to do, it just knocks it out of the park. It's so good.
So with that said, I'm going to say that one of my next honorable mentions is the police academies. Those
Oh,
I actually had to do a little bit of changing on my list. It was originally number 5, but then something clicked in my head. It was like, no, the one that I replaced it with is more, but the police academies. You can say what you want about them. They are goofy. They are they can get outrageous at times, but they are still a movie I can sit down and have it going and not and I can be entertained because you it's one of those series that it has comedy for two different people, kids and adults.
mm-hmm.
So what you laughed at as a kid, you didn't necessarily laugh at as an adult, but what you didn't laugh at as a kid, you can laugh at as an adult because you're understanding it a little bit more. Now, it does have, in my opinion, there are two weak movies to it. That's Police Academy 5 where they go to Miami,
Miami.
and then
Yep.
the last one. I did like 6, but those two are the weak ones. Obviously, they took a major hit with Steve Guttenberg not coming back for 5, 6, 7, but I understand not wanting to because he was wanting to branch out from those movies. So and it ended up he didn't really do much. I mean, he did like the 3 men and the little lady, or and a baby and the little lady and stuff like that, but he didn't really hit that stardom that he had hoped once getting out of the police academies.
It's kind of like Estevez with the Mighty Ducks. Like he
Yeah,
can't really exist outside of the franchise.
or Young Guns. Young
Or
Guns
Young
was
Guns.
even.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like he went into two roles that just hurt him because he went from Young Guns to Mighty Ducks, and now he can't be remembered for anything else. But kind of the same with Gutenberg, and of course, a lot of
Right.
the cast that they had in those movies really didn't go on to do like major things outside of it. Unfortunately, we've lost a good chunk of them now, so trying to get another movie out of it. I know they've been trying to work on one for years. They've been wanting to get the original crew back together, but they just they haven't been able to. And I know it's also been talked about as a remake and shit like that, but they did try the series and that really backfired on them too. So, and the cartoon, they had a cartoon too. All right, one more honorable mention, Dan.
All right. I will I'll pick one more out of this that I think is maybe the most popular of the group that I'm leaving out of my top 5. And it is Harry Potter. I am leaving Harry Potter out of my top 5. I mean, look, I grew up with Harry Potter. We
Right.
read it in 3rd grade, the first one, and that I got hooked. I was a huge Potterhead as a kid. The books meant a lot to me. The movies, I absolutely loved all of the movies. Like there wasn't ever one that I was like, no, no, thank you. Um, but like now looking back on it as an adult, especially through the lens of what J.K. Rowling has kind of become, it's hard to look at them the same way. And kind of like what you were saying, Joe, is like the movies are like the movies are fine, like the books are fine, everything, but it's like they don't really stand out in terms of like what movie franchises could be. Like they it really just is they took a great storyline and adapted it into the movie, and the big saving grace is they casted the absolute hell out of it. Like they nailed every casting choice. So yeah, just wasn't enough to get on my top 5, but still I think deserved to be mentioned because of just what it meant to me as a kid.
And see, that's another one like Lord of the Rings that I figured would hit somebody's top 5. It wasn't
Mhm.
going to be mine because I never got into them. Didn't get into the books, didn't get into the movies. But I understand what's their beings that everybody knows what kind of Star Wars nerd I am. I understand there's other franchises out there that do the same thing. And it never hit for me. But I understand what it is. Now, I do have to ask before I let Mike do his honorable mention. I saw something, but I have no clue how true it is. Is it true the movie company is trying to buy the whole thing out from under J.K. Rowling just because of how she's
I think so. I think that I've heard that same thing too, and I think they want to they want to redo them. They've already talked about like redoing the first one. I think they've wanted to do like TV shows, and yeah, I think
Animated
it's
TV movies or shows or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah. I think Warner Brothers
They want to
realized
do like
that
Polar Express it kind of thing. Is I
yeah,
think
exactly.
the what's it called? The example that was given for the look.
Yeah. Yeah, I think anything with J.K. Rowling still attached to it is gonna is gonna come under a firestorm.
Yeah, and I understand that. That's why I was like, wow, that would be like Disney buying out Lucasfilms. I mean, that
Yeah,
would just be
yeah,
that level of thing. But it's also smart because, like you said, anything attached to her right now is kind of tainted. So if they could give her a number and say, here, give us everything, we'll give you this amount of money, or we'll give you like a 5% royalty or whatever for
right.
whatever we do, but you just stay the hell away from us. I
Please,
think that would be
please
it.
go away.
So, all right, Mike, you get one more honorable mention before we hit the heart of our lists.
Okay, this one, it's kind of going into the rule that you set out, and it's the prequel trilogy from Star Wars. And so
Okay.
like
Ooh,
it's kind of formative in the sense that it's like, so it's like I was, what was that, 98 or whatever, right? So I was like 8 years old when
98,
when
2000.
Phantom Menace came out.
Yeah.
So it was like I got so caught up in the whole like, because the one movie my dad and I went to, like just the two of us, is he took me to the special edition re-release of Empire Strikes Back. We sat in the front row, kind of shat myself a little when the fucking Yeti came out and killed the Tauntaun and dragged Luke away. but it was, so fast forward a couple years and it's like, oh my god, Star Wars is coming out again. We're the like next, the three of us are in the quote unquote next generation who's like carrying the Star Wars fandom forward. And at the time, like, and honestly, I'm still not a great like source of movie critiquing. I'm like, you're gonna see with my list, there's a certain trend that'll carry through some of the franchises that I'm attached to. But I think it was just so fresh, so new, and like it was quote unquote our Star Wars that we could have and be a part of, kind of thing. And then as you get older, you're like, okay, yeah, they're not great. We have sand, we have this, and we have that, and all that. But I think that's why it just missed. But honestly, the 9 hours was all worth it just to have Fate of the Duels. Like,
yeah,
you could bottle Fate of the Duels up, and that was the point of the sequels. It was a hell of a point of the sequel, or the prequels. I'm sorry. So yeah, the prequel trilogy is mine.
Well, I'm sure Dan and I will be talking about Star Wars at some point in our list. So I won't get into it too much. It's a good pick. I will give the spoilers that I didn't break mine down like that. Otherwise, I would have like 3 Star Wars sections
right.
and no other. So when it does appear on my list, it will be as one thing. But just to say this one thing about the prequels, I had a guy that I worked with years ago say this to me, and it really resonated, and I thought it was great. This is with the prequels, this was the first time we got to see actual lightsaber fighting that didn't involve an old man and a robot or a novice and a robot. So that alone is just something to be excited about, was that part of it. And then, as Dan knows, because we've had conversations about this in the past, I've found a new love for the prequels after seeing what the sequels became. So
Yeah,
Dan, you got anything to add?
I mean, I went and saw Phantom Menace when they re-released it, like a couple weeks, like a month ago or whatever, for the anniversary. And yeah, because I know I saw that in theaters, but I don't have like that memory of seeing it. The first one I truly remember seeing was Attack of the Clones. Like, I have that memory. So this is like the first time, like, kind of like remembering to see it. And you mentioned like the lightsaber battle. that lightsaber battle with Darth Maul, seeing it as an adult when I'm like there by myself in like a big comfy like recliner, I'm like, oh, this is what everything like young Dan dreamed about as an adult, like is getting to watch Star Wars on the big screen.
Yeah, it's my favorite franchise out of them all. Now, that's not to say, like I said, we got our list here, but um, so it just there's obviously there's flaws to it. You know, I can see what Lucas was trying to do with the movies. I can see that he was also kind of limited with what he could do because he had to what the original trilogy was. So he had to lead up to the trilogy and tell a story that way.
It has
So
prequelitis, and like there's just
Yes.
certain ways that you just can't get around that. And
yeah,
we can go days on end about what Lucas did and didn't do great, but there's certain points where prequelitis will kill any prequel movie is gonna fall into that pit.
Master Qui-Gon, what's a midichlorian?
yeah. So all right, so let's get into the heart of our list. Dan, let's go from 5 to 1. So you're number 5.
Okay, just number 5, right? We'll go like what we did, or should I go through the
just
whole? Okay,
nope, just round robin it.
okay. Number 5 is Godzilla.
Okay.
Um,
Now, is that original Godzilla or
Matthew Broderick.
all Godzilla.
okay?
I'm
Okay.
including all Godzilla, because so I grew up, my uncle had a bunch of the old Godzilla movies on tape. And that like this was like when we'd go visit, like this is back when, there's no streaming, there's no nothing. He just
Right.
had the Godzilla tapes. Like that's what I got to watch. And then like Mike said, I grew up and a Godzilla movie came out right when I was peak child. It is famously the first movie I ever remember crying in, because I was, as a small child, I was like, why does Godzilla have to die? He just wants to go home and live with his family. I watched the
Just let
hell
him
out
go
of that movie.
home.
Right. I watched the hell out of the Matthew Broderick Godzilla. It's a train wreck, but I still hold a still special place for it. The more recent the monster universe that they've started to do, like I think it was 2016, the first like American Godzilla movie in that franchise, and then everything after that has been great. But what really put this home for me was Godzilla -1 was like a movie going experience for me that sort of, it almost changed me. And I try not to say that hyperbolically. Like, that movie was so good. It was such a good movie. And it harkened like straight back to the original idea of like what Godzilla is supposed to be. It's not at its heart and its origin. It's not about, Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla and Godzilla versus Ghidorah and Mothra and everything else. Like it's supposed to be a metaphor. It's a representation. Like the story of Godzilla is more supposed to be about the people dealing with Godzilla than it is about Godzilla. And Godzilla -1 was powerful. It was beautifully shot. They spent like no money on it and still made an Academy Award winning film. I watched it again like on Netflix twice now, and it still hits just as hard. Like that's the movie that really solidified it for me, was like showing that no matter the time or the era, no matter how you want to play Godzilla, is he going to be, like Rocky fighting the Russians or whatever, or is he going to be like, a metaphor for, post traumatic stress disorder and war and everything? He can be everything, and it's so much fun. And like, there's not been a Godzilla thing that even the show, which was like meh, was still fun to be involved with and be a part of. So I will put Godzilla at number 5.
Yeah, I've heard good things about the newest ones. I really, again, I got a list. I just haven't hit a lot of them yet. I do remember the Broderick one because I would see it on TV now again, and we'd have it flipped on or something. But my big memories of the Godzillas are the old Japanese ones where you could see the strings and the mouths were completely off of what
where he's
dubbing
doing
was.
like karate moves and stuff.
When he double flying kicks the gorilla thing.
But I have heard the -1 is one of the best movies you could ever sit down and watch. Again, I've got a list I'm trying to work through, and it doesn't help that Disney is still pumping out tons of Star Wars and shit like that. That keeps me away from things. But no, I think that's a good number 5. Quano, Mike.
Okay, this one's gonna get me fired.
Can you beat that one?
This one's gonna get me fired, but I do have a little bit of a justification. So
okay, let me give you the boot button ready here.
So my number 5 is the original Star Wars trilogy, and the reason it's a little lower is because someone needs to just lock George in a closet and not let him tinker with shit anymore. Like, okay, so like the one that I go back to at the heart of it is Han shooting first. And you know, like, did he shoot first? Didn't he shoot first? My take on it is he should have shot first because he's a survivor and he's a swindler, he's a survivor, and he's gonna do whatever he has to. Yeah, right. And that's why I never understood the like, oh, it's be unchivalrous for Han to have shot first. I'm like, fuck no. He's like, this dude's here to kill me, so I'm gonna get him dead before he gets me dead, kind of thing. So yeah, but it's all of those. It's the the Anakin's Force Ghost, all that kind of stuff, where it's like, just leave it alone. But just in terms of like what Star Wars spawned moving forward, how it is still at the heart of it. It is every nerd's messiah. Like, that is the thing that science fiction aficionados turn to as like, this is how you do sci-fi on the big screen. And what's sad is with George changing so much of it is so much of it would hold up. Like, I get it, you can see that Home 1 doesn't move right, or it turns too fast, or shit like that, or maybe the Falcon shoots too many times. But I mean, that original trilogy, I know like Return of the Jedi isn't the strongest, but I've watched the Battle of Endor so many times.
Talk about make you cry. Them poor bears.
The poor Ewok trying to wake up the other one.
I'm talking about the space battle. But I mean, and then like, and just to like twist it onto like how it affected the sequel trilogy to me is, it's like, okay, like, I don't like how that all turned out and shit, but like what that original trilogy meant, when you see the Falcon fly through the freaking sand dune and save everyone, and Chewie has to fly it, and Rey is shooting a gun, like, it brought back all the great memories from that original trilogy. They're playing the music, they're playing the Death Star trench music as they're doing that sequence. That is all because of what that original trilogy set in stone. Another one of my franchises is here because of Star Wars. We have Spaceballs because of Star Wars. Like, there is just so much content out there that and like, my Marisol, she wasn't like, she's not a sci-fi girl and stuff, but like, she watched a lot of Mythbusters, and so like, I showed her that trilogy so that when she goes back and watches Mythbusters again, she's like, those are the references that they're all referring to, like, and it is fun to like, because she's like, okay, like, they're all funny and stuff like that, but like, when you see why they're all Tory Grant are making all the Grant RIP, why they're making all these different references, it's just like, okay, great. Like, now I understand, like, a lot of them don't take too much context needed, but it does, just like you said, a show on Discovery Channel where half the guys worked on Star Wars at some point in their career, and then like, that is influencing what they're doing on a Discovery Channel show. So yeah, that original trilogy stands up and is at my number 5 spot.
Well, you're safe because at least it made your top 5. So, I mean, Now we'll see what happens with the other 4. If you put that sequel trilogy in there, then we're gonna have an issue. But you're safe on that. Like I said, I'm sure Dan and I will get into a major Star Wars discussion, so I'm not gonna deep dive it at the moment. But you can't go wrong with it. And like Dan was saying with Godzilla, George had like a zero budget to work with for those movies. And to be able to do a lot of the stuff that he did in those movies, it inspired so much more going forward because of the stuff he was able to do. So,
and to just basically pull it out of thin air. I know, I mean, he obviously bases a lot of it on, like old samurai and like old, stuff like that, or like old westerns. Like it's a very the plot is basic when it comes in terms of like storytelling, but he basically created a entire universe.
Yeah.
An entire full universe of planets, of people with backstories and everything. And like you said, Kawano too, it's like I just got out of the library yesterday the Star Wars book from a certain point of view, where it's like 40 short stories from different people. And it's like you've created this whole culture where people just want to add story and background into this universe, and everyone gets to play in this universe and paint their own picture. It's cool.
It is. It's very it's definitely something that is hard to replicate, as we've seen with the next ones and stuff like that. That they try to copy it, but they can't, because there's just so much magic in it that it's hard to do. But so I'm going to give my number 5, and like I said, this was a last minute change because I really had to think about it, and I've been flip flopping, but it's the whole reason why I call Mike Kawano-san, and that's the Karate Kid.
Oh.
Now, obviously, number 3 is a little bit weaker, but it's still, there. But kind of like we were just saying with Star Wars, that has inspired so much with it. I mean, to this day, if you say wax on, wax off, you've got somebody's attention. You wouldn't have Cobra Kai, which is a tremendous TV show or streaming show. I just saw that Ralph Macchio tweeted a couple days ago that they just finished up the last season for Cobra Kai, plus the next movie in the franchise. So I mean, there's still a want for it. But it's the typical story of a kid that moves into a new area, gets his ass handed to him, and then he finds a way to fight back out of it. And everybody wants a Mr. Miyagi. Why do you think I hired Kawano?
Sorely disappointed.
I mean, heck, I still get called Danielson.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a great story. I know Pat Morita gave an interview a long ass time ago that they didn't want him for Mr. Miyagi, but he just kept pushing and pushing, and he finally walked in there as Mr. Miyagi, and they said, that's it. And it's just a great movie. Obviously, it's like a typical movie. It's not the most realistic that some kid is going to not know anything about karate and in 2 months is winning a friggin' all Valley championship. But, the music, God, the 80s music that runs through all that, chef's kiss on that shit, man. Because
you could argue that the plot of Karate Kid set up the plot of almost every Disney Channel original movie of new kid, fish out of water, has to learn something new, runs into bullies, overcomes bullies, everyone accepts him and loves him at the end. Like that's almost 90% of Disney Channel movies.
And it did have the culture impact of providing one of the funniest long-running jokes in How I Met Your Mother, with Barney Stinson being a lifelong Cobra Kai stan. Daniel LaRusso is the worst villain in the world.
And I still, to this day, say the no can defend. I don't care what it is. I will still, to this day, no, if done properly, no can defend.
Who hasn't going into the fourth quarter of a Packer game and they're up 10 points and you just look at somebody and say, sweep the leg. No mercy. Like, let's end this. Sweep
Well,
the leg.
I have edits that I did that was Packer Kai. No, strike first, strike hard, no mercy. And so I love it. I love it. It definitely I flip flop with Police Academy, but
It's
now
timeless. It's just timeless. It's pure timeless.
Now that I'm sitting here talking it through, there's no doubt that it's my number 5. So Dano, number 4.
Number 4, number 4 for me, means a lot to me. In terms
talk it.
in terms of like franchises that I am like obsessed with, in terms of like lore and backstory and like side stuff and everything, like this is probably like 1B behind Star Wars for me, and that's Jurassic Park.
Okay.
I know the first movie like word for word, beat for beat. I watched it so many times as a kid. The second and third Jurassic Park movies are all over the place, but they are still like so much. For the second one, everyone wants to rip on it, but Jeff Goldblum,
you get full Jeff Goldblum.
You get Jeff Goldblum.
Full Jeff Goldblum.
Pure, uncut Colombian Jeff Goldblum. And then like even with the Jurassic World movies, like a completely different take on it. And the Dominion kind of petered out for me a little bit, but I loved Fallen Kingdom. I'm actually like really excited to see what happens with the new one that they're coming out with apparently next year. But like, and I mean, on top of it too, like I think the movies mean so much more because like I just love the books. Like I literally like will fall asleep listening to the audiobooks of Jurassic Park and Lost World. Like they're just two of my favorite books.
R.
I love
Michael Crichton.
Love Michael Crichton. I just finished listening to his most recent book that James Patterson finished for him. It was so good. I love Michael Crichton. And like just as much as you like, you could argue that the second and third Jurassic Park movie like bring it down. The first one is so effing good that I think Aaron Rodgers in like 2015 carries this team to the NFC Championship game. Like it's almost like a dividing line of like when you go and watch like any movies from around like basically 85 to like 2000, and you start judging their like special effects or whatever, and it's like a movie that came out like 99. It's like Jurassic Park came out and like these dinosaurs look real. It still holds up today when you watch it. And it's like that kind of stuff, and the acting, and everybody just absolutely nails every part of it. And it's a murderer's row of like talent, with Richard Attenborough.
That was my first Samuel L. Jackson experience.
Samuel L. Jackson, right? Wayne Knight, Jeff Goldblum, obviously, Sam Neill, like Laura Dern. Everyone slaps, and it's still just so good. I love everything Jurassic Park. All of it's great. But I will put it four down the list a little bit just because some of the other titles do tend to drag it down a little bit, but the first one still brings it up.
I remember seeing the first one when I was a kid, and it scared the hell out of me. I never did watch the second one, but the third one's where they were with William H. Macy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I did watch that one.
Leone, yeah.
Yeah, and that one wasn't bad. I didn't mind that one. I haven't been able to watch the Jurassic
World. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's solid. I mean, and what else? You got one of the most memed moments from Jurassic Park. That gigantic pile of shit, and it just every time you turn around, somebody's putting that out.
I thought you were gonna say
he was talking about the Goldblum.
Yeah, I thought you were gonna say, your scientists are so preoccupied to oh my God, I know this line by heart. Your scientists are so preoccupied whether or not they could. They didn't stop thinking they should.
Oh, I was talking about the one where they they asked Neil and Goldblum about it, where they put Sam Neill on the Triceratops, but they photoshopped the Triceratops and they put him on top of Jeff Goldblum when he's all wounded in the control room, and Sam Neill is leaning on Goldblum's belly. It's so that just show, like I said, cultural impact, like that. And Spielberg says it to this day, all the guys at ILM who worked on it, and it's all captured in that scene when you see the first Brachiosaur, and none of us to this day say, you know, we're all Sam Neill. That's a dinosaur. And it, you know, it's just awesome. And what I was gonna say, Dan, don't worry, I've got several on my list that are okay. After the first couple, it's kind of like, oh, what are we dealing with? But no, awesome pick. I couldn't bring myself to admit that it didn't make my top 5, so that's why it wasn't one of my honorable mentions. 3-year-old Mike would have murdered me. But
all right, Mike.
All right,
follow that.
My number 4. Okay, so number 4 is Tremors.
Okay.
Wow.
And I remember, and so like this goes into the depths of like my upbringing in like media. So my mom like always tried to show me as like many different movies as she could when I was growing up. And I think I saw the second one first because my mom was flipping through channels and she was like, oh my God, there's a sequel. And so we watched like most of the second one. And then we went to Blockbuster and found the first one and watched the first one. And my God, like putting the you know, and the whole backstory on it is like Universal didn't know how to promote the original movie. Kevin Bacon at that time was like, well, shit, here goes my career in the shitter. And I've made another bust. Oh shit. And it now, Tremors is now like, it's just this whole cult following, and it threads the needle between comedy and sci-fi horror so well. And what I did like about it, and like I don't know how many people know that there's like 5 or 6 of them, because Michael Gross is just like, fuck it, I'm gonna do it until I die kind of thing.
And a TV show.
Yeah, and because he just loved being Burt Gummer, which is so funny because the dad from Family Ties is like, yeah, I'm a survivalist. I'm a survivalist gun lover in the middle of buttfuck nowhere, Nevada, but with my Atlanta Hawks hat. But it's just such a fun, good movie. The characters are all smart in their own right. Like that's the thing that I think it doesn't get enough credit for, is they're like nowhere, you know, they're middle of nowhere hicks, but none of the characters are stupid in that movie. Like everyone,
no one's played like dumb for
yeah. The kids are dumb because they're kids kind of thing. And, you know, like everyone is the way they are for a reason. And I did enjoy, like in the second and the third one, they evolved the monster so that like it can walk and then it can fly kind of thing like that. And it always was just one of those, like, it's like an amusement park ride, and where it's like, it's just different versions of the same the different roller coaster kind of thing. It's like the first one's Space Mountain because it's all underground, and then, you know, it goes to Batman because it can walk, and so yeah, I just love the creative ride that movie franchise took you on, where you're like, it's a worm, like what is that? But they just had so much fun, and everyone who was in those movies talked so glowingly about the experience they had, because, you know, it's, you know, kind of like we were talking about, you know, it's in that era where it's still mostly practical shots and stuff, and they actually built like a fucking 30-foot worm to put in the ground and stuff like that. So I mean, it's just formative, and it does build off of the, like, okay, Star Wars, sci-fi, what can we do? And there's one movie that's in the middle of those two that's still higher on my list, but just building off of that sci, like I said, kind of ties back to Star Wars. It's like this thing from another planet, and now you have worms in the desert kind of thing. So Tremors.
That's a good choice. I mean,
yeah,
I'm surprised it made it to number 4 in a top 5 of all time franchises. But I
Like
mean,
I said, you're going to reevaluate who I am and what you should do with me after my list.
but I mean, I have no problems with it. It's so funny that, like you said, that it borders on, horror, sci-fi, but comedy. When the original intent for the first movie was to be a horror movie, but they couldn't get it done properly, so it just kind of went on
Because
to.
Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward are just their roles as Val and Earl. The two of them have a chemistry on screen that was absolutely perfect for what that movie needed.
Yeah, I have no problems with it. I watched the first one. I really didn't get through any of the rest of them because it's just like, okay, now we're kind of getting a little. But it's another one, like I said, with The Land Before Time. They just have to suck the complete as much as they can out of the story to just
Michael Gross
continue
doesn't
it.
want to live just on AARP and Social Security.
But yeah,
Gotta keep those royalty checks coming.
so my number 4, it's hard. This one I might get a little bit of flack for, not because it's a bad franchise, but because
Mike
it
just
might.
brought out Tremors, Joe. Like, why are you worried about anything at this point?
Well, I'm not worried because, as you guys know, I don't give a fuck what anybody says. But it just, in my mind, you see this franchise on like number 1 all-time lists everywhere, and I love them, and that's The Godfather. Now, obviously, I'm not a big number 3. That one definitely is weak because they struggled to do what they needed, and obviously they couldn't get a lot of the people that they needed to come back to make it a better movie. But 1 and 2, oh, storytelling, acting, just amazing, amazing. And I don't know if you guys have ever done it, but there's a version of it that they made for HBO where they cut it, chopped it all the way up, split it all the way around, and started from when Vito was a kid all the way until the end of Godfather 2. And it's like an 8-hour movie. And HBO will occasionally put it out there, and it's a complete waste of a day if you ever had one. But they went in and put, deleted scenes that really filled in some gaps and stuff like that, and it's just tremendous. This is one movie franchise that I can honestly say can never be remade as a movie. But with that said, I think they could do the Mandalorian or whatever style thing to it and make it a TV show. And
Didn't they do a
start
TV
like
show of it on Paramount, or it was like
no, that was they
the
did
true story behind it, or
no,
something?
they did with that, I know what you're talking about, was how it got made.
How it got made? Okay.
But I think they could honestly do a TV show of Vito growing up in the neighborhood leading up to the first Godfather, and then maybe go through that as a remake style. But the movies themselves can never be remade because you're never going to get that back with it.
I have been with my wife for 10 years now. We're celebrating our 3rd wedding anniversary in just a couple weeks. And the very first time I ever met her father, he told me that The Godfather was one of his favorite movies of all time. And I was so nervous about him liking me. I did not have the heart to tell him that I have never seen The Godfather. And I bullshitted my way through. He was like, "Well, what's your favorite scene?" It's like, I gave him like the classic, like, "Oh, there's so many. Like, how do you I know?" And I think it was when we were at the rehearsal dinner for our wedding. I told him, I'm like, "David, I have to tell you something. Like, I've never actually seen The Godfather." he thought it was the funniest thing. But that is, Joe, like you mentioned, like there's a bunch of like ones on your list. The Godfather is on my list of like, I know they're good. There's plenty of people tell me that they're good and I need to watch them. I just haven't sat down and made the commitment to watch them, but I know I need to.
Well, I tell you what, Dan, if you're gonna, and I will be honest with you, this is no shit, and I know I just said it's a complete waste of day if you do it. If you're going to watch them,
Uh-huh.
I would do it the HBO cut, because
Okay.
that, even though it's kind of like when people ask you how do you watch the Star Wars movies,
Right.
you can do it, Godfather 1, Godfather 2, Godfather 3, and you'll be fine. But the way they did it for the HBO cut is so tremendous that it reignited my love for those movies, because it gave you so much more than what the original versions of them did. So I know I
Feel
said
that.
it's like an 8-hour, viewing.
Hey. That's gonna be my next Father's Day. I'm gonna tell everybody, I'm like, I don't want anything else. Everyone leave the house for a day. I'm gonna sit down and watch The Godfather.
But like I said, just the people that they got cast in there,
Mm-hmm.
the story, how they always try to adapt books into movies and it doesn't always do well. This is one of those rare instances that they hit the notes perfectly. And like I said, this one I could see people giving me flack for, just because it's always on like the blockbuster lists and stuff like that. But right now it's at my number 4.
All right. Feel that.
Dan, number 3.
All right.
Sorry, my phone beeped, so I was like, who's telling me what now?
People are already lighting you up on Twitter.
They're already lighting me up, damn it.
This one I feel is going to, no offense, I feel like this one might go over Joe's head, but I think it's going to land right in
hard.
I think it's going to go right in Mike's wheelhouse. The Lego movie franchise. Lego Movie 1, Lego Movie 2, and the Lego Batman
movie alone. That opening montage alone in the Lego Batman movie,
where he just like starts listing through all the old Batman. Are those real? Probably worth a Google. Probably there.
So this might surprise you, Dan, but I love the first Lego movie.
All right.
I haven't watched the other two, but I do love the first one.
The first Lego movie came out my last year of college, and I was living with a group of roommates that I was like good friends with, and Lego movie came out, and I feel okay saying this now because it's legal in both the state I live in now and the state I went to school in, but we got super stoned and watched the Lego movie, and it was one of the best movie experiences of my life. And there was a time like we as a group, like on a Saturday night or something, my roommate Jocelyn, like she would be like, we don't have anything going on tonight, like can we get high and watch like the legally streamed download episode of Lego movie that you found? I'm like, hell yeah we can. Hell yeah we can. And we went to Walmart at like midnight when they first released the DVD, because like we had to have the DVD of Lego movie. It's just like it's one of those movies, and all three of them, they just came out of nowhere. Like Lego movie was supposed to be like what Barbie was supposed to be, like a toy franchise movie that just comes out of nowhere and blindsides you. And Lego movie did that better than like anything I feel like I can remember, of just like, you think you're going to go see one thing and it just from the get-go was like, nope, like buckle in Buttercup. Like you're here for 2 hours. You're here for an hour 45 of all of this. And there's just no weak part to it. Like the every character that they bring in does everything well. All of the voice acting, everything is like just nailed perfectly. And they commit to the bit of like Lego and the Lego movie without like going overboard. It's like a very fine line, and they nail it. And like Kawano said, like the Lego Batman movie, that one was like I was like, okay, this is where they're gonna like F up. And then it was like, oh god damn, like they did it again. Like they did it again. So yeah,
they didn't forget towing the line. They went into the line and popped back out.
Yeah.
Spot clean, like just yeah.
Like,
yeah,
like,
I'll leave it at that.
Like Michael, you said, like they had like thread the needle of being like too self-aware, but be like being comedic enough and but still being heartwarming enough to like actually still even care about the movie. They just nailed it. 10 out of 10.
Yeah,
And I don't know if they're coming out with more, but like if they ended those three, that's 3 bangers.
Yeah.
Well, even the behind story of, you know, how they have your main storyline of the Lego movie, but then you have the behind it where it's the kid and the dad.
Right.
We've all been there.
Right.
You know, sitting there playing with Legos and you build something and then the little kid comes over and wants to, and you're like, no. I'm on it. I am.
Yeah.
And it made so much sense because when you first start watching it, it's just a bunch of goofiness.
Right.
And goofy lines and goofy this, and then all of a sudden you see, oh no, it's a kid that's, doing this it made total sense, and it was perfect. Like I said, I haven't watched the other two, but I have my DVD copy over in my pile over there somewhere because I occasionally bust it out.
If you get it, I think agree with Mike. Lego Batman is the better movie than Lego Movie 2. Lego Batman is, especially if you're like if you have any knowledge of any like superhero lore or like that kind of backstory stuff, they do that one really well too.
Yeah,
it's almost like a Spaceballs in a way.
Lego fight Batman in the best way possible. Yeah.
All right, Mike, hit us with your number 3.
All right, so my number 3 is gonna tie in the gap between Tremors and Star Wars, and it's Alien. It's the Alien franchise.
Okay.
And so, like I said, this is dipping into the whole it's fitting your rule, Joe, where there's 3 movies at minimum, but it's those first 2 that it makes the rest of them just doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter how bad some of those other ones were. You have 2 of the greatest directors that have ever walked this earth who took this franchise. So, you have Ridley Scott, who has given the credence of like, all right, Star Wars became a great movie. Like A New Hope proved that you can do science fiction on the big screen and you have it make a shit ton of money. And now it's given to, sci-fi is like, let's give it to the hands of this visual masterpiece worker in Ridley Scott. And he's going to do Truckers in Space. And we're going to have them all get picked off one by one. And I'm not a horror movie person. I like to sleep at night. I don't like things intruding in the dark narrows of my dream world. But the claustrophobia that Ridley Scott created in that first movie is some of the best just storybook crafting. And Ridley Scott uses all the he has headlines on the Blade Runner newspapers kind of thing, and all of the detail that he crams into Alien. And once again, kind of like touching on Tremors, where it's like, these are all smart characters. They're all reacting to this thing in a very realistic, yeah, I would think it would be like that kind of way and stuff. Like, literally the only part is John Hurt sticking his head over the egg kind of thing and stuff. But other than that, everything else after that point in the movie is like, well, shit, yeah, you would have reacted that way and you would have done this and you would have done that. And the big bonus of the first 2 Alien movies is Sigourney Weaver cemented herself in film royalty, playing the character of Ellen Ripley. And even her backstory on that is so funny, how she's talking about she thought she was going to lose the job because she thought she was allergic to the cat, and the cat was a very central character to the original movie, but it turned out it was something on her outfit or whatever. But so the first movie is pure sci-fi horror, and then they go to the second movie and it's like, all right, James Cameron, do your take on it. And he's like, we're going military, and we're going. I know he's Canadian, but we're going full on America, and we're gonna shoot some bugs, kind of thing. And you have the absolute best of not the absolute best of Michael Biehn, but Michael Biehn up there, and he actually lives this time in a movie for once. Doesn't just get turned into meat hamburger. Bill Pax,
game over, man. Game over.
R.I.P. to Bill Paxton. And you just carry forward, and you take the horror elements from the original movie, but you just add like the just gung-ho macho sense of the Space Marines to the second one. But at the heart of it, it is Ellen Ripley's journey of like, okay, like all I want to do is be a space coal trucker, and like I'm just supposed to get coal back to Earth, but now what the fuck? John Hurt's got turned inside out, and here we go, kind of thing. But and then how it goes through like her PTSD at the beginning of the second movie, and then it kind of like turns into her motherly instinct with her and Newt as over the course of the second movie. And like I said, the other movies do exist. Ridley Scott went on to wank about the meaning of life in the more recent movies, but those first two movies alone just totally changed what everyone thought you could do with sci-fi on a big screen, in terms of like, okay, like Star Wars, like that's what you think of sci-fi. It's like this fantasy world and, you know, in a galaxy far, far away kind of thing. But it's like, oh, Alien was like, Ridley Scott was like, well, fuck it, we're out by Saturn, and I'm going to show you what we're going to do in this world and stuff. So Alien is up there on my list on number 3.
I can't speak on it. I mean, I know the movies, but I've never really watched them. So, and they're not even on my list. But
well, and it's like Michael, you said, like it's the first movie that like used I mean, I'm half-assing this, so maybe I'm wrong, but like to me, it feels like it was the first movies that was like, hey, you guys like know aliens, like you know, like aliens, like it felt like before this was like, oh, it's like the 50s, you know, like you know, like like it's coming from outer space kind of thing. Like this is the first time it was like, aliens are badass and they're gonna come fuck you up, buddy. Like they will just kill you.
And I forgot to tie it into Tremors. So some of the guys who did the effects for Tremors, they worked on Alien and Aliens. And so the tie-in there is they're like trying to figure out how to make the graboid look, and they're like, oh, like it's not outer space, it's a worm on Earth. And they have this funny story where they're talking about how like they tried to do up the graboid when on the first shot, and the director was like, it doesn't look right, it looks like there's something wrong, and they're like, slime, we need alien slime. So just to bookend how those three franchises tie into one another, they're just inspiration on inspiration on inspiration.
2 movies with like badass practical effects, man. Yeah,
absolutely.
And a time that they didn't have the technology that we do now, so that makes it
and kind of tying back into the George Lucas, like James Cameron's like, I don't have a big budget for this. You know, you look at Aliens and you're like, that must have been Fox. And it's like Fox was like, he can have a little bit, but like, you know, like you're not Ridley Scott. And so James Cameron being like the move, you know, I know he's not like the greatest person kind of thing, but just how his mind works from a filmmaking point of view, like he built so much of the practical effects on that movie, and it stands the test of time that so much of it is like, yeah, like you don't lose your immersion in it in any of the special effects shots in that movie.
Well, like I said, I can't speak on that, so I'm just going to go ahead and jump into my number 3.
Yeah. Go for it.
In Indiana Jones. And there's not much you can say outside of that. I know people have their feelings about the Crystal Skull. I haven't been able to watch the Dial of Destiny just yet. I know it's on Disney Plus and that, but you've got Raiders, you've got Temple, you've got Crusade. And you know how they always talk about how the sequels get worse, as you know, most movies with their sequels get. Crusade was probably the best one out of the 3 just because of the back and forth between Sean Connery and Harrison Ford. So, I mean, I'm a big action adventure guy, so I love that stuff. You know, Indiana Jones. obviously Star Wars. I even loved The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, even though that was the movie that made Sean Connery quit Hollywood. But those type of movies are just my go-to. And again, it's another movie that if I see it on and I flip it on, I'm not doing anything until it's over because I'm engrossed in it. Now there's a couple. Now I've come up with a couple of theories on Temple, and I think that whole movie was just to see how much they could gross people out.
It was a real heat check of a movie, like in general. It was like, how much can we gross them out? How much like cultural insensitivity can we get away with? And he's like, here's short round. Like, let's put it right in your face.
And the person who played Willie ended up marrying Spielberg. So that had to have been like his test on, is she going to be the one or not? Because as much shit as he put her through, that has to be Stockholm syndrome. There's no doubt. There's no doubt about it. I did see a interview or a blurb or something where she said she didn't know how to scream before the movie, so she had to learn to scream for the movie. And that's just all you get out of Temple. But that just goes to show that that series of movies are just amazing because it's a good mix. You can tell George Lucas had a hand into it because he and Dan and I know you and I have talked about this with the sequels. The sequels of Star Wars, they tried to put too much humor into it and they tried to force it in there. Whereas between Star Wars and Indiana Jones and movies like that, they had a good mixture where it was a natural humor into it instead of a forced, well, we need you to laugh at this because we're writing it because of that. They just went out there. Plus, what better story than the scene from Raiders where you've got this guy doing his sword shtick and it's supposed to be a whole drawn out battle with Indiana Jones using his whip and he just pulls his gun out and shoots because he was sick for the day and didn't want to film any longer. So yes, the Indiana Jones franchise is my number 3. I understand there's a lot of hate for Crystal Skull. I still enjoyed it. I get what it is. I haven't seen Dial of Destiny yet, even though I've heard that one's kind of on the lower scale too. But you also got to remember, Harrison Ford's in his fucking 80s. What do you expect out of him as Indiana fucking Jones?
I mean, I think that's why it works so well. You mentioned like the comedy stuff. It's like because it's Harrison Ford as Kobe Bryant, and everyone else just like you are working around the orbit of Kobe or like Michael Jordan. Like you're working around them. Like the sequel stuff, like they tried to have, it's like, oh, Scottie Pippen's gonna be the star this time. It's like, no. Like it needs to be Michael, and Harrison Ford like is perfect for that because it's just the serial like cowboy, like, you know, 50s, 40s dramas. And Harrison Ford is the perfect like superhero quote unquote for this franchise. Yeah, he nails it. It's such a good franchise all up and down.
The only thing that I can say is the only way they would have been able to ever remake the movies, which again I don't think is ever possible, like I mentioned is if they used the guy from the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people don't like those either, but I really did. And I every once in a while when I need to watch something, I'll find it on Amazon Prime or Disney Plus or whatever. But the only way that you could replace Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones is if you use that guy. And that guy's not getting any younger either. I think he's in his 50s. So it
If only River Phoenix had stuck around for us, he could have been the next Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Wasn't he young Indy in that first part of Raiders?
Was in the River first part Phoenix? Or last, yeah.
Or of Crusade, yeah.
But he was also rumored to be Anakin Skywalker in Attack of the Clones, so we would have had a big fight there. But that's my number 3. we're getting into our last two. So Dan, why don't you kick it off with your second one or your number two?
I mean, Joe, you mentioned Anakin Skywalker. Star Wars is my number 2. And it's,
Now it's got
it
me
might.
worried what your number one is.
I'm I think number 1. We'll see what happens in number 1 here. I mean, Star Wars, yeah, like it means so much to me. It's so much fun. Like I mentioned, like I think it's just there is something for everybody. There's really no other franchise, movie, book, TV, whatever that just is a sandbox and lets everyone be able to kind of figure out their own place in it as much as Star Wars is. And the movies, like, I did it. I did the rewatch with all of the movies with Aaron Alice on watching stuff, and like you go back and it's like, yeah, even the ones that are just absolutely bonkers, like Attack of the Clones, it's like, yeah, but it's still Star Wars. Like you're still getting Star Wars. Like that's why like any of like the TV shows and stuff, it's like I didn't enjoy Book of Boba Fett, and I really didn't like how they, made it Mandalorian season 2.5, but it was still Star Wars. Like you were still getting to like there's just there's something about like the whole essence around it that like I will watch anything. And then like when you mention as movies, people think of just the Skywalker saga, like the 9 movies, but then you throw in Rogue One, which might be the arguably top 2 Star Wars movies ever made. Like just like from a story and like visual like movie creation, like it's so good. And I know it got a lot of shit, but Solo was a hell of a lot of fun. I really enjoyed watching Solo.
A lot better
like
than the sequels.
yeah, that's true. Like just even the worst Star Wars movie on the platter there is still pretty damn good. So I'm putting Star Wars here, and I'm interested to see how you react to what I put number 1.
Okay, so I'm going to do something extremely weird here, and I'm going to jump ahead of Kawano. Star Wars is my number 2.
I am shocked by both of you.
See, now I'm really interested in what Joe's got.
I'm so confused right now.
Well, I will be honest. If I had to, my top 2 would be like a 1A, 1B type thing. They're so interchangeable with them, but Star Wars, like you said, Dan, has a lot of meaning to me outside of just being a movie. I've got 500 books from the expanded universe over there. I've got Funko Pops of probably 20 or so Funko Pops right up there. I've invested into it, but I have a lot of personal reasons why I am invested into it. Mike, you said it kind of resonated with me because you said that your dad took you to the when they re-released them into theaters. My mom did the same exact thing to me. We went to the theaters for each of the re-releases. We made a day of it and stuff like that. So there's a lot of that for that to me. And if I had my way, I would subtract the sequels out of it completely, and you would have like the perfect franchise ever. Because then you can consider the prequels as your lower tier but still tolerable movies. You have your TV shows, you have your cartoons, you have your book series, you have everything. With that said, I understand what they were trying to do with the sequels, but Dan and I have had these conversations millions of times on this stuff. The execution for what they were trying to do with the sequels completely ruined what the sequels were meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of being the Skywalker saga, you made it the Palpatine saga,
Mhm.
because it was completely just continuation of everything Palpatine. That's a whole another conversation for a whole nother day, that we could probably have our own podcast on, that we would be talking for the next 5 years on. So, but it's my number 2. Again, it's more like a 1B, but it's one of my things. Again, I can lose a day just because the next time they have, a marathon on TBS, I will flip it on and I will be lost, because that's my soothingness. Again, the reason why I haven't got through a lot of my list of movies to watch is because I keep dropping stuff, and it's like, okay, now I got to watch this one. I said this a couple months ago to to Emma on Twitter, that I'm to the point where, even though I'm enjoying it, I'm kind of hating Star Wars right now. And it's not because it's bad stuff that's coming out. It's just they keep throwing it at me. It's like, now I'm going to lose a week because I'm trying to catch up on my episodes. I think I finally caught up on all of Bad Batch just like last month. I haven't even been able to dig into the Acolyte yet. So it's crazy, but we're talking about movies here. I always liked Attack of the Clones, and I always will have a special moment with Revenge of the Sith, because I lost like a whole day just rewatching that over and over again. And you got the originals. I mean, I know everybody's always down on Return, and oh well, Luke is just a whiny kid. You get why he's a whiny kid. He's stuck with an aunt and an uncle that won't let him, move on and branch out and shit like that. I'd be whiny too.
Just
Hell,
like they said on Family Guy, is like, there's two sons and no women. What am I supposed to do on Tatooine?
Now, I will disagree with you a little bit, Mike, on some of the stuff that Lucas did with the reimagine. There are some things he did add in there that added to the story, but the way he did it sucked because of the graphics and the stuff like that. The scene with Han confronting Jabba at the Millennium Falcon, amazing.
Yes. No, that is
but
a great,
horrible, because you see the replicant of him going up and over. So again, I'm not going to keep going on it, because I could probably spend another 3 days talking, and we're already at an hour and 20 some minutes for this episode. But yeah, number 2 is Star Wars for me.
All right. So before I do my number 2, I realized the engineer in the group totally fucking miscounted his top 5, and now I'm picking between 2 of my favorite actors of all time, and it's gonna go purely on which franchise has more good movies. So unfortunately, sorry Arnold, Terminator is in the honorable mention, because you had, just like Alien, you had 2 awesome movies, but everything else should have been nuked in the future. So, but Arnold is atop the list of actors that it's like, if he's in something, I'm going to watch it and I'm going to enjoy it, because Arnold, the actor, can do no wrong for me. So that's the last honorable mention I have. Number 2 is Die Hard. And I think what separates Die Hard is Bruce Willis, like, he wasn't, it's not like he was a scrawny kid or anything like that, but in the first one, he's not Arnold, Sly. He's not any of those like yoked up 80s action heroes. He looks like your dad kind of thing. Like,
Right.
Like, and I always appreciated that, like, he's just the cop. He's just an everyman, and he's just doing and it is a Christmas movie, the original, and they even doubled down on it in the second one. Like, they just so blatantly were like, in the second one, like, it's a fucking Christmas movie. This sequel is also happening on Christmas. So like, they have I forget the cop who, as the car's getting towed, he's like, ask Santa for a new one, or whatever, something like that. But I mean, not much needs to be said about Die Hard. Like, it's just balls to the wall action, and the level of practicality that they kept in it. I always appreciated. Like, obviously, I know that John McClane going down the side of a building with a fire hose isn't the most realistic, but everything else up to that point in that movie, it's like, yeah, like he's figuring that shit out as he goes. And the part that always resonated most with me is Bruce Willis just ad-libbing his like talking to himself move points it across the whole series. Like the moment where he's like, just
Why didn't you stop him, John?
yeah,
Be
or
dead
in
too,
the dust, it's
asshole.
come down to the coast, we'll have some fun, have a few laughs. You know, like just all those moments, or even in like Live Free or Die Hard when he's setting up to drive the car into the helicopter and he's like, they needed a senior detective. How hard can that be? Like it is just that whole like whenever any of us encounter issues in our lives where we're like, can't believe that we fucking got stuck with this load of shit. It's like, yeah, we're gonna mutter shit under our breath and we're gonna like disagree and be abrasive and stuff, and just like that. And then of course on top of it, you've got the studs, you've got Bruce Willis doing Bruce Willis action things and stuff, and it just, even though they dipped into the mid 2000s things of trying to make Jai Courtney a thing, even that couldn't ruin the series for me. So everything, I just, that whole series I will watch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll watch all of them. It does not bother me which one. I will watch Bruce Willis shoot people up.
Joe, I'm ISOing this. I'm ISOing right now because Die Hard is my number one movie franchise.
Okay, so do you want to hear something?
Hit me.
You've never watched any of them.
That's all right.
I as a kid once, I remember I randomly saw like the second half of, or like maybe like the like last like three, like I missed like the first half hour of Die Hard with a Vengeance on TV. And I was like, holy shit, like this is awesome. And I remember there's like a scene where they cut to Hans Gruber falling off the tower, and from the first movie, I'm like, who the hell's that guy? And but like Mike said, like all of the Die Hard movies just work so well because again, it's like the Indiana Jones thing. Bruce Willis plays this character so well, and it's like you can't imagine anyone else being this character, and it all revolves around him. And I personally, for my money, Die Hard with a Vengeance is my favorite Die Hard movie because you've got a villain that's almost on par with Hans Gruber and why am I blanking on his name? Alan Rickman. You've got a villain that almost matches up perfectly with him, but then for like the first time in any of these movies, you actually pair him up with it's a buddy cop movie with Samuel Jackson. Like Zeus, like God of Thunder, don't piss me off. I'll put a lightning bolt in your ass, Zeus. Like it's just such a, and then on top of that, kind of like with Star Wars, it spawns this like trend of Die Hard on a blank, Die Hard on a boat, Die Hard on a bus, like Under Siege is Die Hard on a boat. it's Speed.
Harrison Ford got in on it and did Die Hard as the president in Air Force One.
Air Force One, exactly. Like it's just one of those movies. Like it's a movie. Any of those movies, if I see it on, I need to sit down and watch it. And like there's just no, like it's just the movies where like unlike Star Wars, and it sounds like I'm bad mouthing Star Wars, but it's like there are Star Wars movies where I won't just like, if like Attack of the Clones is on, like I'm not just gonna sit down and watch Attack of the Clones, like, but like if it's Die Hard and I know like, oh, we're getting to this part, oh, we're getting to this kill, like we're gonna get to this, like it's very much like it just it drips you all these different scenes, like you have to watch the next one, you have to watch the next one. Yeah, Die Hard for me is
and I've got so with the third one, so when epoxy started to become a thing and my dad had to fix the side mirror on one of the family cars, and he got epoxy for the first time. And it was so funny because he's like, yeah, it's this new glue, and it comes in 2 different bottles, and you have to mix them together. It's like the bomb in Die Hard, the 3rd Die Hard movie, but it's glue, not a bomb. I'm just sitting there like, all right, Dad,
Okay.
just tell me when I put the duct tape on it to hold it on as it sets. So even forget mainstream media, my own dad was referencing it for the first time. He lost his mind buying epoxy glue.
It's like the bomb from Die Hard, but it's not bomb, it's glue.
Now, see, the reasons why I never watched Die Hard was because I went the other way and I watched Lethal Weapons. So the Lethal Weapons were my movies.
I mean,
more
Lethal
than the
Weapons
Die
is
Hard.
great. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
no shame in
But-
that.
are you ready for my number one?
Go for it.
Yes.
And I know everybody's shocked that Star Wars is not my number one, but there is actually a hint behind me at what my number one is.
Oh,
it's the
okay.
And this one, you can honestly ask anybody who knew me as a kid. I was absorbed into the Ghostbusters culture. There are actually pictures around here of me in the Ghostbusters jumpsuit with the proton pack. I had everything. I had the proton pack. I had the trap. I had the goggles. I had everything for Ghostbusters. It again is, and I kind of mentioned this with when I did the Beverly Hills Cop as my honorable mentions. This was a complete accident of a casting that worked out. Because when you go through and see all the guys that were originally supposed to be in the movie compared to the guys that are in the movie, you're like, that would have never worked. That should have never been a thing. But here we are in 2024, and we just had the 4th movie be released. And it just, the comedy, it again, like I said with the Star Wars and Indiana Jones and the George Lucas thing, the comedy wasn't forced. It was a smooth entry into it. And, you know, it does still have a lot of the horror aspects to it, because I don't care who you are, you're still jumping out of your mind when the terror dog arms are popping out of Dana's chair and sucking her into the kitchen. And when I was a kid, fucking Ghostbusters 2 scared the living shit out of me. Vigo popping out of that fucking painting, hated him. I had nightmares for years because of that son of a bitch.
The goo coming out of the bathtub.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But I've always loved Ghostbusters. Cartoons were my thing. The movies, all that. And it's also one of the reasons why I hate Bill Murray. And well, I shouldn't say hate, because I'm not a hate. But one of the reasons why Bill Murray has made me mad is because we should have had a true Ghostbusters 3, but he wouldn't do it because he had a falling out with Harold Ramis. And it wasn't until Harold Ramis passed that we were able to start getting the sequels we should have been having years ago. With that said, Afterlife is one of the best sequels I have seen in a long time. Because that is the perfect way to make a movie with somebody who has passed. And I will not lie to you, it made this fat man cry. And if you haven't seen Afterlife, I suggest doing it, because it is one of the best sequels to be made. And like I said, you know how Star Wars did it with like Carrie Fisher and that, where, you know, they were able to cut in and all that. Or with Rogue One, where Tarkin was, they kind of involved that into Afterlife, but they did it in a better way that the effects didn't look off. It's still because, and I don't want to spoil it if you haven't seen Afterlife, but I just got to say the way they did it was perfect. Frozen Empire, great for what it was. There are some complaints that I have with the two newest sequels, but they're minor. There's not, it's not like they're horrible movies. It just, there are some things with it, but just all those movies and the actors in them and just everything about them is that's why it's my number one.
I always appreciated that Ghostbusters, you got Dan Aykroyd at his bassomatic absolute limit for a whole movie. He was at the level of how he plays the bassomatic sketch on SNL for a whole movie for that first Ghostbusters movie. So great pick, Joe.
I mean, sorry, that's why it works so well. Is because you've got all these SNL, SCTV guys that do comedy so naturally. Like you said, like they can act and just the comedy comes naturally. Yeah.
Well, like I said, if you actually look at the list of people that were supposed to be in it compared to what they had in it, it's crazy. Like Louis Tully wasn't supposed to be Rick Moranis. It was supposed to be John Candy.
Right.
Winston Zeddemore wasn't supposed to be Ernie Hudson. It was supposed to be Eddie Murphy. Venkman wasn't supposed to be Bill Murray. It was supposed to be John Belushi. There's one other one that I keep forgetting, but there was another one that was supposed to be involved in it. And I think it was Egon. I don't think Harold Ramis was supposed to play Egon.
I think you're right.
But whoever was backed out, so he was like, okay, well, I'll just step in. And that's how we got Egon. So, I mean, it's amazing that this accident of a movie turned into what it did.
Yep.
It's quintessential 80s, man.
Absolutely. All right.
Definitely.
And then my number one, it's a much more recent one, but goes back to my whole love for like specific actors and shit, is the John Wick series. And
that was on my honorable mention list. Oh.
And I think what, it's Keanu at his absolute best, and you're like wondering the whole time. I know he wasn't a spring chicken when he made the first one, but he also but you're like watching as he does, that's the whole thing, is that most of it is practical-ish stunts for him and all. And it's just unreal how he and Stahelski crafted this whole series together. I know it like, the bulletproof suits and all that kind of stuff, but I mean, it's just some of the most fun, like, gun show stuff that you see in a movie set. And then I think the overarching part of it that makes it so fun is, like, especially the first two. I know, like, the timeline kind of spreads out because of how the movies play out in the third and obviously in the fourth one, but it's just funny that the first two movies, it's like, this is like the shittiest weekend that a person's had. So, like, the premise behind the first couple movies is it's like, dog gets killed next day, I'm gonna go murder everyone. And like the weight of the John Wick character is it's shown in Vigo, and when John Leguizamo has to tell him, like, yeah, I hit your son because he beat up John Wick and killed his dog. And when Vigo turns around and all he can utter is, oh. Like, it's that scene where it's just like we haven't seen John Wick do shit to that point. He's kind of driven his car around and stuff like that. And it's at that moment that, the first time you're watching it, you're just pulled in and you're like, all right, Keanu's about to do something and let's see what it is and stuff. And then just that whole interaction between Vigo and his son, and then the son goes like, I'm gonna go make it right. And Vigo's like, did you just hear a fucking word I said? And like,
the fucking pencil.
That whole exchange, and then it's another one of these movies, like, obviously not to the extent of Star Wars, but the little chunk of that assassin world that they built in that world within the John Wick series, that world is so carefully crafted. Like, the most outlandish thing that you kind of laugh about, other than the bulletproof suits, is like, no one knows what a gold coin is worth. But it's the whole, like, it's kind of like Fight Club, where it's like, if you have to ask, you're not in the in crowd kind of thing. And so just that world building, Keanu doing everything in those movies, adding guys like Donnie Yen and stuff, and just um Hiroyuki Sanada being in the last one too. Like they've pushed the right buttons with the kind of co-star to bring in and how to like intertwine, and just the storytelling is so enjoyable in that world.
Okay, so this may surprise you, but I haven't watched the John Wick movies. Now, if I can catch the first one after a certain point, I may watch them. But I have this thing that I won't watch a movie if I know something happens to a dog.
If
Yep.
you can find like the timestamp people have of like, you can start the first one after this, you don't miss anything.
Yeah.
After the dog, like before the dog dies, just get to that point and watch it from there. I'm with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've not watched a lot of movies because something happens to a dog, and I won't.
Nope.
Or
Totally
really any kind of animal, I'm. Or there's some.
Dude, I watched Clifford the Big Red Dog with my son today for the first time, and halfway through that, I was like, "This is the last time we're watching this movie. Like, this dog is like going through too many emotions. I can't handle this."
Well, there was one that my dad really likes, and we were sitting there watching it, and all of a sudden the dog gets shot with an arrow, and I'm like, "I'm done," and I walked out the room. It's like, no, the dog survives, and I was like, "No, I don't care. They just shot the damn dog."
I'm with you. I love the John Wick movies, and it's so cool because like I don't know if there was more that came before it, like lore or like backstory, but like I knew nothing about the John Wick movies like before. I went into that first one completely blind, and it was like, holy crap, this is my new favorite thing. And like the fourth one, like I went and saw it in theaters, and it just became like a cult thing almost, where it was like everyone that went to these movies knew it's gonna just be bonkers, and so it's like it was a movie experience of like everyone's just like, fuck yeah, like let's go, like every fight scene. Yeah, John, that was a hard one to leave off. That was a hard one to leave off.
Yeah.
I really loved the John Wick movies.
And see, I love Keanu. I to this day love Bill and Ted. Keanu Reeves is the man. And the only reason that franchise didn't make my list is I still haven't seen the third one yet.
I've heard mixed reviews about the third one.
I have too. And he looks really weird because
Yeah.
I think he had the beard and mustache going on, and they tried to CGI it out.
Yeah.
It weird. But
it's Henry Cavill-ish from what's it, Mission Impossible versus which one of the DC movies? It's a little bit of that
probably
action.
Justice League.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I love Keanu. Keanu is amazing. Even just as a human being, he's an amazing person.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, to this day, that's the whole reason. Anytime I hear somebody say, I know the whole thing about 69 and everybody, that's the whole joke. But anytime I hear somebody say 69, that I always hear it in the Keanu 69, dude.
Joe, I will say though too, Mike brought up Donnie Yen in the fourth movie. He basically plays an assassin version of his character from Rogue One.
Oh, really?
It's so awesome. He is maybe one of my favorite
it's like the honest trailers guys joke is like he has to play blind people in his movies because no one will believe that they can fight him if he's not blind in one of his movies.
Well, like I said, if I can find a timestamp to where like, okay, I'll watch from this point on if I'm not lost in it, and I'll watch it. But I have a strict thing about movies.
No.
Totally
understand.
It could be like a Star Wars movie. And if they have like just the only dog in the Star Wars universe and it gets crushed by an AT-AT, I will no longer watch that Star Wars movie.
In what's it called? What was the second Last Jedi? Joe was watching those crystal foxes and like, if a rock crushes one of these fuckers,
if anything happens to these crystal foxes.
And I didn't even think of that of Luke friggin' Skywalker. I was more worried about them damn crystal foxes.
Oh,
All right, guys. I think we went long on this one.
Yeah,
But it seems
but
like
no,
we always
it
go
was worth
long
it.
with Dan here because Dan, we can have a hell of a conversation with Dan.
Yep. Thank you, Dan, for taking out let's just call it 2 hours of your time to talk with us.
My wife literally just like opened the door like 10 minutes ago, like, still in here?
Hey, just be glad it's not a Star Wars centric friggin' podcast.
Right, exactly. I mean,
We might not
about
even
30% of it
leaving.
became that, but
of the original series.
We might still be here tomorrow.
yeah.
Mike went to sleep already. But Dan Kotnik, thank you for joining us.
Of
Check
course.
out our website, ohanapackers.org. Check our merch, check our blogs, check our live streams. Follow the pod on Twitter at Ohana_Packers. We will be putting up another poll this week to go over what next week's episode will be. Who knows? Maybe Dan will be back depending on the content.
Dan will still be here.
Maybe Dan and Joe will just have been recording for the whole week at that point. Who knows? Gotta find out next week, Tuesday. But thank you. Go Pack Go and aloha.